So in our last squat video, we talked about how the grip impacted the squat. And in that video, I talked briefly about creating a good shelf for the low bar squat, but really kind of left you hanging. Well, you don't have to wait any longer because that video is here and you're watching it now. So without further ado, let's hop in to today's video. So let's talk about the upper back and how it impacts the squat. But before we get to the upper back, we need to talk about the head and how the head or the neck impacts the upper back. And the more I get into the sport, the more things that I hear at powerlifting meets annoy the heck out of me. Like when people yell, "look up" or "head up," because this tends to make the athlete impinge their cervical spine, which leads to them having an unbraced core and hyperextending their lower back, which is not good. And so then the adverse happens. People tell them, hey, maybe you should keep your head down or your chin down, which ends up rounding their cervical spine, which rounds their thoracic spine, which makes their bar way out in front of them. Leads to a horrible bar path that is going to be really difficult to recover from. And to clear the air, I exaggerated those positions, but let's be honest, we're powerlifters, we exaggerate everything. Okay, so now that you know what not to do, let's talk about optimal head position for the squat. So this won't work for everyone, but for a majority of people, if you find something in front of you to fixate on that puts your eyesight at about a 45-degree angle, it will keep your head from doing all sorts of funky stuff. Oh yeah, and it's not chin down, it's chin back. Think about like if you were trying to dodge someone like punching you or slapping you in the face. And when you put all that together, you get a nice neutral head position that doesn't mess with your thoracic spine or your lumbar spine. Alright, so to review, we stay away from end ranges. We don't want to look straight up and impinge our cervical spine. We don't want to look straight down and round our cervical spine. And if you find yourself doing either of those two things, just remember the 45-degree rule. It's a great starting point. And remember, we want to keep our chin tucked in or back, as this will keep us from altering our head position once it's set. Okay, now that head position's out of the way, let's talk about where to set the bar during the high bar squat. Okay, and if you take a look at the screen, you can see I have a couple of places marked. One of those being the C7 vertebrae, and that's just the bone that kind of sticks out of the back of your neck. Yeah, if you reach back there right now, you can probably feel it. But we want to place the bar on the traps just below that bone. So it's still sitting on the traps, just below that C7 vertebrae. Okay, and now we know where the bar sits, so let's talk about some common mistakes that are made during the squat. One of those being overbracing. And this happens when lifters are trying to get insanely tight and trying to take a huge breath, and the bar ends up rising and falling. And this is just wasted energy, and it doesn't really need to happen in the squat. And next we have a pretty confusing common cue that's given to a ton of lifters, and that is like break the bar or bend the bar, and for the most part, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you can't bend the bar. You're not that strong. But what you can do is get tickled. Yeah, you heard that right. I said get tickled. And what I mean by that is if you imagine someone coming up behind you and tickling your armpits and how tense or what your elbows would do in that situation, that's what you should do with the bar. You should get tense, pull those elbows down, try and protect those armpits from getting tickled. And when you put it all together, it could look something like this. So let's review. Don't overbrace. Don't take such a big breath that you're actually moving the bar and wasting energy. Keep your elbows down, keep them in, and stay as tense as if you were getting tickled. And now let's talk about the low bar squat. So when we think about setting up for the low bar squat, there are two things that come to mind, and those are your upper traps and your rear delts. And if you can get the bar to sit in between those two things, you'll have a pretty awesome shelf built. See, as you can see here, upper traps are above the bar and the rear delts are just under the bar. And this creates a pretty comfy position for that bar to sit. And there aren't a ton of mistakes that I want to touch on, as most of them are corrected by just getting the bar in the right position. But the one I will touch on is overbracing. Again, don't let the bar rise or fall, you're just wasting energy. And to review, again, don't overbrace, don't put the bar too low, don't put it too high, and make sure you keep those elbows up. Don't let them fall, as that could ruin the shelf you have it sitting on. Alright, that pretty much wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it, please be that cool nerd or nerdette that gives this video a thumbs up. That really helps me out. Also, if there's anything that you would like me to discuss or talk about or break down in one of these videos, please leave a comment down below. And until next time, nerds, stay muscular.